The highest number of homicides in 27 years happened in 2021 here in the San Antonio metro area. So we have to ask, what contributed to the increase?
And KSAT digital journalist Ferris Abawi joins us live to break down this news story posted on KSAT.com. Hey, good morning, Ferris.
Good morning. Good morning. It's good to join you.
Good to see you. First off, how many homicides were reported last year and why were there so many?
Yeah, so Stephanie, San Antonio police told us that right now that they believe that there were 160 homicides last year in 2021, which was, not only a big increase from even 2020, but also bigger than the recent high that we had seen in 2016, when I believe 151 homicides were recorded in 2016. So this definitely does lead to some concern. We've talked to a lot of experts who say that a lot of these lingering issues from the pandemic are still present among our city. And so when you see these stressors from the pandemic continue to persist, we've seen an increase in gun violence, not just here in San Antonio, but also in so many other parts of the country. So San Antonio is not alone in seeing this big uptick in homicides. And, police are working on reviewing those numbers, finalizing it, and figuring out their next steps forward.
So it's not an anomaly. After reviewing the data, was there anything else that stood out to you, Ferris?
Yeah, Mark, I think there were two things that I thought are really important for police to address going forward. I think one thing is that the number of unsolved homicides is starting to increase from year to year. Police used to clear roughly 60 or 70% of their homicides in years past, which means that they made an arrest or at least identified the suspect in roughly 70% of those cases. According to our analysis, looking at last year's numbers, it looks like more than half of the homicides remain unsolved at this point, which adds a lot of work to the detectives. And also, it just must be very frustrating for those families who have lost somebody to not have that closure. So that's one thing. I think the other thing that really stands out to me is, unfortunately, it seems like the victims can be getting younger and younger in these cases. There were so many teens, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds that have been shot with no suspect identified in those cases yet. And beyond that, we did see a few babies on that list, as well as a 6-year-old girl, Soraya Perez, who you guys may remember was shot in that car meetup over Mother's Day last year.
Yeah.
So when you see the age of these homicide victims get younger and younger, it's just a really tragic thing.
And what are police saying about the homicide numbers?
Yeah, Stephanie, police are working on, reviewing these numbers and looking into it. The one thing that they want to make sure people understand is that San Antonio is still, by and large, a safe city. The number of homicides may be concerning, and it certainly is a concern. But something that's important to note is, our city has grown so much in these past few years alone. Over the past decade, I believe our population has grown something like 8%. And so while these numbers may be scary, the last time we saw this many homicides was 1994. That homicide rate was so much higher than the homicide rate we have now. We're something at about, 10 homicides per 100,000 people now, which is, not only lower than when San Antonio had that bad streak of gun violence in the 90s, but also still lower than most major cities that have seen the same crime increases we have. So I think something police want to note is that a lot of these homicides are usually tied to risky behavior, things like that, and it's not on a random scale. With that being said, I know that they're definitely going to be looking into these numbers and seeing what they can do to maybe close these cases more and seeing how they can support their detectives in making sure these cases get closed.
All right, with some much needed perspective on some data, KSAT digital journalist Ferris Abawi. Thank you so much, Ferris.
Thanks, guys.